It began like every great love story, quietly, unexpectedly, and with a sense of inevitability. Armin and I met at a corporate networking event. I wasn't even supposed to be there. A friend had dragged me along saying, "You need to get out of your shell." I remember walking into that glossy hotel ballroom, feeling like an imposter among men in tailored suits and women with confidence that glittered louder than their diamonds. And then I saw him. Or maybe he saw me first. I'm not sure anymore. What I do remember is the way the crowd seemed to blur when our eyes met. He wasn't the loudest man in the room, but he had presence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. He smiled, not the rehearsed kind, but the warm, disarming kind that makes you want to keep looking. He walked over, introduced himself, and within 5 minutes, I felt like I had known him for years. We talked about everything: work, music, how we both hated small talk, but somehow found comfort in this conversation. There was an ease about him, a steadiness that wrapped around me like a soft shawl in winter. By the end of the night, when he asked for my number, I didn't hesitate. And when he texted me the next morning, I smiled at my phone like a teenager. The first few months were magic, the kind of love that makes you forget the world is capable of cruelty. He wasn't just attentive, he was intentional. He remembered every detail: how I liked my tea, the book I couldn't stop talking about, the story of my childhood pet. He listened, really listened, like my words mattered in a way no one else had ever made me feel. He spoke of loyalty like it was his love language. He said things like, "If I ever have to choose between temptation and you, I'd choose you every single time." He made me believe that kind of love still existed, the unshakable kind, the forever kind. So, when he proposed, it didn't feel like a decision. It felt like breathing. We didn't just marry, we merged. Our lives folded into each other's like two rivers finding the same ocean. The early years were everything I had hoped for. Late-night drives with music playing low, quiet dinners at home where he'd talk about his big plans, and I'd listen, proud, feeling like his dreams were ours. He climbed the corporate ladder faster than I imagined, and I cheered for him louder than anyone. When he got the promotion to senior director, he hugged me so tightly that night, whispering, "We did it." And I believed him. I believed every word because in my mind, success was ours to share, just like struggle had been. I didn't notice when things began to change. Or maybe I noticed, but didn't want to admit it. He started coming home later. At first it was innocent. A big project, a demanding client. He'd text me, "Don't wait up." And I didn't. I trusted him. That was my role, wasn't it? To trust. The secretary came into the picture later. Or maybe she was always there, lurking in the periphery of his life and mine. Her name was Sana. I remember the first time I heard it. He mentioned her casually over dinner. "Oh, the new secretary joined today. Smart girl. Quick learner." I smiled, nodded, and thought nothing of it. Why would I? Why would I, when the man who swore loyalty like an oath was sitting across from me, reaching for my hand under the table? If only I had known that was the beginning. The quiet opening scene of a betrayal that would gut me from the inside out. Looking back now, I realize betrayal never kicks the door open. It tiptoes in quietly, disguised as harmless moments you dismiss because love teaches you to trust, to give the benefit of the doubt. The first sign was so small I almost laughed it off. He came home late one Friday night. Nothing unusual but this time he smelled different. Not like cologne or whiskey, but like vanilla and something floral. A scent that didn't belong in our house. I asked, half joking, "New office air freshener?" He laughed too loudly and kissed me on the forehead. You and your detective mind, he teased. I smiled, but something sharp pricked the edges of my chest. The second sign came during a party his company hosted. We walked in together, like we always did, my arm linked with his. He introduced me to a few colleagues, then excused himself to greet someone across the room. I didn't mind. Networking was his playground. But then I saw him with her, Sana. She was laughing at something he said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Too lightly to be formal, too familiarly to be innocent. I stood there holding a glass of water, watching, waiting for him to glance my way, to wave me over, to claim me the way husbands do. He didn't. He kept talking, leaning in just a little closer, like her words were secrets he wanted to keep. When he finally returned, I asked casually, "Who's that?" He shrugged. "Oh, that's Sana, my secretary. I told you about her." His tone carried something unspoken, a warning almost. Don't make this a thing. So I didn't. I swallowed it down with the last sip of water and told myself I was overthinking. Then came the phone habits. He used to leave his phone anywhere, on the couch, the nightstand, the bathroom counter. Suddenly it was always with him. Even when he showered, it was face down on the sink. Notifications silenced. Once, I reached for it to check the time, and he walked out of the shower so fast his wet footprints trailed across the floor. He snatched it, smiling, but his eyes, God, his eyes, held a flicker of something I'd never seen before. Guilt, fear, or maybe both. I ignored it, because that's what loyal wives do, right? They trust. They wait for explanations that never come. The worst part wasn't the obvious changes. It was the microaggressions, the tiny cuts that bled slowly over time. The way he stopped asking how my day was. The way he scrolled through his phone during dinner instead of looking at me. The way my opinion suddenly felt optional. One night, we were out with friends. I made a comment about a business trend, something I had read earlier that day, and he laughed, not with me, but at me. "Don't worry, sweetheart. This isn't your world," the table chuckled. I smiled, but inside, something shattered. Because that wasn't him. That wasn't the man who once said, "You make me smarter just by listening." But I stayed silent. I stayed because love teaches women to be patient, to understand, to endure. I told myself this was a phase. Stress from work, pressure from the promotion, anything but the truth that was clawing at the edges of my sanity. And then, the final straw, the moment I should have run, but didn't, was the dinner plan. I had spent hours cooking his favorite meal, lit candles, wore the dress he once said, made me look like a poem he couldn't stop reading. He walked in late, phone pressed to his ear, barely glancing at me. I heard him say, "Don't worry, I'll call you back after dinner." Then he looked at me and said, "Let's make it quick. I have work to finish." He didn't notice the table, the effort, the way my heart was sitting in that chair, waiting to be seen. That night, I realized something terrifying. You don't lose love in one blow. You lose it in whispers, in shrugged shoulders, in eyes that stop searching for yours. And yet, I stayed. Because sometimes loving someone feels like a debt you don't know how to stop paying. Silence. That's what our house became. Not the comforting kind, the one filled with the hum of two people coexisting in peace, but the heavy, stifling silence that feels like it's watching you, judging you, suffocating you inch by inch. I stopped recognizing my own home. The walls, that once echoed with laughter, now carried the weight of words unsaid. His shoes still sat by the door. His jacket still hung on the chair. but the man who wore them. He was drifting farther away every day, like a ship pulling away from the shore, and I was the fool standing there, waving at the waves. The nights were the hardest. He stayed out late more often, always with a reason polished to perfection. Meetings ran long, clients demanded time, deadlines. I started sleeping with the TV on, just to drown out the emptiness of our bedroom. His side of the bed was cold more nights than it was warm. I tried to hold on. God, I tried. I cooked his favorite meals. I texted him sweet reminders during the day. Sometimes he responded with a heart emoji, sometimes with nothing at all. I told myself it was stress, that he still loved me, that we were just going through something. That's what loyal wives do, right? They patch, they endure, they keep the cracks hidden so the world doesn't see the mess inside. But the cracks were widening, and I could feel myself falling through them. I stopped recognizing myself. I used to be vibrant. I used to laugh at stupid memes, dance in the kitchen while making tea, paint my nails just because. Now? My reflection looked like a ghost, eyes dull, hair tied up in the same messy bun, lips curved into a smile that didn't reach anywhere near my heart. Every day felt like walking on eggshells. If he came home in a good mood, I breathed easier. If he came home quiet, I braced myself for an argument that never happened, because arguments require words, and he had none left for me. I started noticing everything. The way his phone lit, up at midnight. The way he smiled at the screen in a way he no longer smiled at me. The way his laughter changed tone when it wasn't for my ears. I didn't have proof yet, but my body knew. Women always know. We feel betrayal in our bones before it reaches our eyes. One night I tried to talk. I waited for him to come home, and when he finally did, close to midnight, I said softly, "Armin, are we okay?" He looked at me like I had asked for the world. Of course we're okay. Why wouldn't we be? His tone was flat, impatient, the kind of tone that kills hope. I nodded and said nothing more. Because how do you fight for something when the other person won't even admit there's a war? That's when the loneliness began to rot inside me. It wasn't just that he wasn't there. It was that I was disappearing in the space where he used to be. I stopped reaching out to friends. I didn't want to explain. I stopped visiting my parents. I couldn't bear to lie when they asked, "Are you happy?" I just shrank. Day by day, I folded myself smaller, quieter, until the only place I existed was in the memories of who I used to be. The worst part? He didn't even notice my absence in my own skin. Or maybe he did, and it didn't matter anymore. There's a particular kind of pain that comes from being invisible to the person who once saw every part of you. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It just sits there like a slow poison, hollowing you out from the inside. I started avoiding mirrors because I couldn't stand the look in my own eyes. The look of someone who stayed too long, hoping for something that was already gone. And yet, I stayed. Because I wasn't ready to let the dream die. Because I believed foolishly that if I just loved harder, held on tighter, maybe, just maybe, I could bring him back. But love isn't a rope you can pull someone in with. Sometimes, love is a noose you hang yourself with, one knot at a time, and I was tightening the knots with my own hands. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a loud moment. It was something so small, so ordinary, that if you blinked, you'd miss. And it was Sunday morning, the one day he used to keep sacred for us. We had a tradition, breakfast together, no phones, no rush. I woke up early that day, maybe because I wanted to feel like us again. I made pancakes, His favorite. The ones I hadn't cooked in months because he was never home to eat them. I brewed coffee just the way he liked it. 2 sugars, no milk. When he walked into the kitchen, I smiled the way I hadn't in a long time. "Surprise," I said softly, sliding the plate toward him. He barely looked. He picked up his phone from the counter, scrolling, eyes glued to the screen. "I can't. I have to go meet a client," he muttered, grabbing his keys. I stared at him, the fork slipping from my hand. "It's Sunday, Armin." He didn't even pause. "Not for me." And then he was gone. Just like that. No kiss, no thank you. No glance at the pancakes that were still warm, the coffee still steaming, my heart still beating like maybe it mattered. I stood there, listening to the sound of the door closing, and something inside me broke. Not with a scream, not with tears, but with the softest, cruelest sound. Silence. I sat down at the table and stared at the empty chair across from me. The pancakes blurred in my vision, tears spilling before I could stop them. I took a bite of one, but it tasted like cardboard, like disappointment, like every promise he ever made now rotting in my mouth. That was the moment I knew I wasn't losing him. I had already lost him. And worse, I had lost myself trying to keep him. I didn't throw the plate. I didn't rage. I just sat there, chewing a piece of pancake I couldn't swallow, and thought, so this is what it feels like to disappear. In your own life, the thing about breaking points? They don't come crashing down like thunder. They come quiet, like a whisper in your chest saying, "This is enough." And that whisper stayed with me long after the pancakes went cold. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic day, not a stormy night, just a regular Tuesday afternoon, the kind where nothing extraordinary should happen. He had left his phone at home, something he never did anymore. I found it on the nightstand while making the bed. For a moment, I just stared at it. That sleek black rectangle held more of him than I did. His laughter, his late nights, his secrets. I picked it up slowly, like it might burn me. I didn't mean to open it. I swear I didn't. But when the screen lit up with a notification, my breath caught in my throat. A name I knew too well. Sana. Miss you already. The message sat there, glowing like a wound. I told myself it could mean anything. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe I was crazy. But my fingers, my traitorous fingers, slid across the screen before I could stop them. His phone wasn't locked. He trusted me that much, or maybe he thought I'd never look. The chat opened, and my world split in two. The first thing I saw was a picture. Her. Not scandalous, not naked, just her, smiling in an office chair, captioned, "Your queen waiting for you." My stomach twisted. I scrolled. I shouldn't have, but I did. Message after message, thread after thread, stretching back months. "I wish I could kiss you right now. When she sleeps, I think of you. Next trip, just us. No excuses." My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. The words blurred through tears, but I kept reading because pain is a strange thing. It wants to consume all of you, every last piece. Then I saw it. A message from last night, the night he came home late smelling like vanilla. "You taste better every time." I couldn't breathe. It felt like the floor gave way beneath me. My knees hit the edge of the bed, but I didn't feel it. My chest was a cage, my heart pounding like it was trying to claw its way out. For a moment, I just sat there, phone in hand, staring at the proof of everything I had been too scared to admit. The late nights, the cold silences, the way his eyes stopped searching for mine. It was all here, written in pixels and lies. I dropped the phone like it burned. It landed on the carpet with a dull thud, but the sound echoed in my ears like a gunshot. And then came the strangest thing. Calm. Not relief, not anger, just a terrifying hollow calm. Because now I knew. The guessing was over. The doubt, the excuses, the what-ifs, they were dead. He was cheating on me. He wasn't just cheating. He was in love with her. I walked to the kitchen, made myself a glass of water, and drank it in silence. My hands still trembled, but my mind was sharp, too sharp. Every memory replayed in high definition, the promises, the laughter, the nights I stayed up waiting, thinking he was mine. He wasn't mine. Maybe he never was. When he came home that night, I didn't say a word. I watched him walk in, loosen his tie, kiss me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. His phone was back on the nightstand by then. He didn't even notice. I wanted to scream, to throw the glass in his face, to ask him why. But I didn't. Because I realized something in that moment. He had already taken enough from me. My trust. My love. My years. I wasn't going to give him my rage too. Instead, I smiled. The kind of smile that hides a war. And I thought, you broke me quietly. I'll rise the same way. I didn't confront him that night, or the next, or the one after. Instead, I carried the truth inside me like a blade I was sharpening in secret. I went about life as if nothing had changed. Because in a way, nothing had. He was still lying. I was still pretending. The only difference now was that the pretending wasn't for me anymore. It was for him. I needed time, not to forgive, not to fix, but to prepare. Because when I finally spoke, I wanted my words to be a mirror he couldn't look away from. 3 days later, it was Friday night. He walked in late, as usual. I was sitting on the couch, not with the TV on, not scrolling my phone, just sitting, there, calm, like the eye of a storm. He paused when he saw me. Maybe he sensed something. Or maybe he didn't, because guilt makes men blind. "You're up," he said, loosening his tie. "I was waiting," I replied softly. He smiled, that practiced, careless smile. "You didn't have to." "Oh, I did." Something in my tone made him freeze for half a second. He walked toward me, but I held up my hand. "Sit." He frowned. "What's going on?" I looked at him for a long moment. Really looked. At the man who promised me forever and gave it to someone else between office walls. "Do you remember our wedding vows?" I asked quietly. He blinked. "Of course." "Say them." He laughed nervously. "What is this?" "Say them." He hesitated. "I promise to love you, to respect you, to stay loyal." Stop there. My voice was still calm, but sharper now. Loyal. That was the word, wasn't it? His jaw tightened. "What are you trying to say?" I leaned forward, my eyes never leaving his. "I'm saying, when you were texting Sana at 2 a.m., did that feel loyal to you?" His face drained of color. Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. His lips parted, but no words came out. I didn't give him time. "When you told her she tasted better every time, did loyalty cross your mind even once?" The way his eyes widened, that flicker of naked fear. I'll never forget it. He opened his mouth, closed it again, like a man drowning who doesn't know which way is up. How do I know?" I cut in, my voice steady as stone. "Because your phone told me the truth your mouth never had the courage to." He stood up, running a hand through his hair. "Listen, It's not what you think. I laughed then, a small, broken laugh that sounded nothing like me. Don't insult me twice, Armin. He froze. And in that stillness, I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. The woman who used to tiptoe around his moods, who cooked his favorite meals to win back scraps of attention, who shrank herself to keep him happy, she was gone. I stood, slowly, every movement deliberate. Do you know what the worst part is? I whispered. It's not that you cheated. It's not even that you lied. It's that you made me doubt myself. You made me feel small in the home I built for you. You took my love, my loyalty, and you treated it like an old coat you could toss aside when it didn't fit your new season. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't. Not a word, because nothing you say will stitch back what you ripped apart. His eyes glistened. Whether from guilt or fear, I don't know. He reached for me then, like touch could erase betrayal. I stepped back. Don't. My voice was low, but it carried all the weight of every silent night, every unanswered text, every cold bed I had lain in alone. I'm leaving, I said simply. He froze. You can't, I smiled. Watch me. And in that moment, the power shifted. Not because I screamed, not because I shattered things, but because I walked away without giving him the performance he expected. I didn't pack that night. I didn't slam the door. I just went to bed in the guest room and slept. Not peacefully, but with a strange, burning clarity. He had broken me quietly. I was going to rise the same way. The morning after the confrontation, the world felt different. Not because it had changed, but because I had. For the first time in years, I woke up without waiting for his approval, his touch, his attention. And strangely, the silence didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. He tried, of course, tried to explain, tried to blame loneliness, stress, the cliché excuses men stitch together when their castles of lies collapse. But I didn't listen. I had listened enough for 2 years. I started small, changed the password to my bank account, opened one in my name only, called a lawyer, not because I was ready to divorce him that second, but because knowledge is power, and I had spent too long powerless. He begged, he cried, he swore it meant nothing. And maybe once upon a time, those tears would have drowned me, but now they looked like what they were, water on a fire that was never his to keep burning. I didn't scream. I didn't post cryptic quotes online. I didn't play the victim. Instead, I booked a therapy session. It felt strange, sitting there, telling a stranger how I had turned myself into a ghost to keep a man warm. But with every word I spoke, I came back to life. Days became weeks. I started running in the mornings, at first to escape the ache in my chest, then because I liked the feeling of my heartbeat being mine again. I signed up for a short course, something I had put off for years because he needs me to manage the home. I reconnected with friends, the ones I had slowly drifted away from because it was easier to avoid questions than admit the truth. The first time I laughed, really laughed from the stomach, I startled myself. It was over something silly, a meme my best friend sent me. But for a second I thought, this is what breathing feels like. As for him, he spiraled. The man who once strutted through rooms like a king now lingered in doorways like a shadow. He said he'd change. He said he'd wait. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he didn't. But that wasn't my burden anymore. One evening, I walked into the living room, and he was sitting there, holding a framed picture of us from happier days. His eyes lifted, desperate. Is this it? Is this how it ends? I looked at him for a long time. Then I smiled, a small, soft smile. No, Armin, this is how it begins. For me. And then I walked away, not because I hated him, but because I finally loved myself more. I moved out 2 weeks later, got my own apartment. It wasn't big, it wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every cushion, every plate, every corner, mine. And that first night, when I lay down in a bed that held only me, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. Healing didn't happen overnight. Some days I cried so hard I thought I'd split open. Other days I felt invincible. But slowly, I rebuilt. Not the life I lost, but the one I deserved. And here's the thing. I never thanked him. Because betrayal isn't a gift, but it was a mirror. And in that mirror, I saw the woman I had almost forgotten. A woman who doesn't beg to be chosen, because she knows she always has a choice. My story didn't end in rage. It didn't end in revenge. It ended in something stronger. Rebirth. It was a crisp evening when I decided it was time. My new apartment still smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Boxes were half unpacked. A few frames leaned against the wall, waiting for a future that finally felt like mine. I opened the balcony door, letting the cool air wash over me, carrying the distant hum of the city. A sound I used to drown out, but now embraced like an anthem. On the coffee table sat a small velvet box, the one he had given me on our second anniversary. Inside was the diamond ring he swore meant forever. I picked it up, turned it in my fingers, watching it catch the light one last time. How many promises had sparkled like this? Beautiful, blinding, and empty. I walked out onto the balcony. Below me, life moved on. Cars honking, laughter echoing from the street. I tightened my grip on the ring, feeling its sharp edge dig into my palm, and then I let it go. It slipped through my fingers like water, spinning once, twice, before disappearing into the night. No sound when it landed, no drama, just gone. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space in my hand, waiting for regret. It didn't come. Instead, there was a strange, electric lightness in my chest, like the first deep breath after being underwater for too long. I went inside and opened a drawer. Inside was a pair of scissors. For years, he had loved my long hair, said it made me look feminine, elegant. I had kept it that way for him, even when I wanted to change. I grabbed a fistful of hair and cut. The sound was soft, almost soothing. Snip, 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 falling strands collecting on the floor like old versions of myself. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. And for the first time, I smiled. Not the practiced smile I used to wear like armor, but something real, something raw. I picked up my phone and opened the travel app I had downloaded weeks ago. There it was. Bali. Solo retreat. 10 days. My finger hovered for a second, then tapped Book Now. And just like that, the future wasn't a question mark anymore. It was a doorway. As I zipped the last lock of my suitcase 2 weeks later, I paused by the window one last time. The city was glowing under the night sky, and somewhere down there, in another life, he was probably still wondering if I'd come back. But I wouldn't, because this wasn't about leaving him. It was about finding me. I grabbed my bag, took one last look around the apartment, and whispered to the empty room. Not for him, but for myself. Here's to the woman who survived loving the wrong man, and chose herself anyway. Then I closed the door behind me, and for the first time in forever, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of a life I didn't need anyone to promise me. I remember the sound before I saw the truth. A soft laugh. Too soft, too sweet to belong in a late-night office call. It was almost midnight, and I was standing outside his glass-walled cabin, holding 2 cups of coffee like a fool. He had told me he was working late to close the deal. I believed him because that's what loyal wives do. They believe, they trust, they carry the weight of home so he can shine in his world of glass towers. But when I reached the door, the laughter stopped. Silence. A silence so heavy it felt like the air around me froze. Through the tinted glass I could only see shadows. 2 silhouettes too close, her head tilted back, his hand resting where it should never be. My fingers went numb. Coffee spilled on my wrist, burning my skin, but nothing burned like the realization blooming inside me. I didn't open the door. I didn't scream. I just stood there listening to the sound of my heartbeat pounding against my ribs like it was trying to break free. In that moment, a memory came back to me. A promise whispered into my hair on our wedding night. You will never have to doubt me. Loyalty is all I know. Loyalty. A word he made sacred for me, only to crush it under his polished shoes on this cold corporate floor. I walked away that night without saying a word. Not because I was weak, but because silence, in that moment, felt sharper than any scream. He didn't know I had seen him. He didn't know the quiet storm that had started inside me. What do you do when the person you built your entire life around becomes a stranger in one heartbeat? You break, but not loudly. You break like glass underwater, silently, invisibly. Until one day, the surface ripples and the world finally sees the shards. Before all this, before the laughter behind the glass, before the lies curled around midnight, I was the kind of woman who believed in love like it was oxygen. I didn't just believe in it. I built my identity around it. I grew up in a small town where loyalty wasn't just a word. It was the currency of relationships. My parents didn't have much, but they had each other. My mother used to tell me, Beta, love is not in the big gestures. It's in the quiet promise that they'll never leave your side. I carried that truth like scripture. So, when I met him, Armin, I thought God had written my prayers into flesh. He wasn't just handsome. He had that rare steadiness that made you feel safe in a world that spun too fast. He had this way of looking at me like I was the only woman who existed. When he spoke about the future, it sounded like poetry. A house filled with sunlight, little feet running across the floor, Sunday mornings that smelled like coffee and laughter. I was ambitious, too, but my dreams were softer. I didn't crave boardrooms or titles. I wanted a home. A space where love didn't need to be proven because it pulsed in the walls, in the way we touched, in the way we stayed. So when Armin said, "Let me build for us, you keep us grounded," I agreed. It didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like teamwork. I was that woman, the one who woke up early to pack his favorite lunch because he hated cafeteria food. The one who stayed up late waiting for his car lights to appear in the driveway. The one who learned to love his world so he wouldn't have to leave mine. I memorized the names of his colleagues, his stress triggers, his coffee preference, 2 sugars, no milk. I knew him better than I knew myself, and I was proud of that. Back then, I thought devotion was power, the quiet kind that didn't need applause. I thought love was about holding on, no matter how hard the wind blew. I wore loyalty like a second skin. I wasn't naive, though. Or at least I didn't think I was. I had heard the stories, office affairs, men working late. But Armin wasn't like that. He wasn't the type. He used to scoff at those men in films who cheated on their wives. Disgusting. he would say. If you can't respect loyalty, you don't deserve love. I believed him because believing was easier than questioning, and maybe that was my first mistake. Not loving him, but loving him so blindly that I forgot to leave a little light on for myself. Because here's the truth I didn't know back then. Sometimes the people who swear loyalty the loudest are the first to break it. And sometimes, the women who give everything end up with nothing, except the shards of who they used to be. I was that woman, the giver, the believer, the one who thought love was unshakable if you built it with enough care. Didn't know I was standing on sand.